Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Welcome back. We're doing another back-to-back recording for us. So as far as things to talk about, we're a little limited because we just did this 24 hours ago. So
Yeah, and you heard our episode last week. We're a little rusty.
yes.
We're struggling.
I think last week went better than expected. We had a few little hiccups, but by the end, I think we had gotten our act together. So
Don't worry, those hiccups will be edited out, I'm sure.
yes. It's the beauty of editing. I'm looking at houses this morning, so that's that. Just seeing what's out there and just dreaming about a kitchen with counter space and air conditioning. So that's what I'm doing this Sunday morning.
I just woke up and I'm drinking coffee. That's what I'm doing.
Courtney's like, I'm not awake yet, so.
Yeah.
But I hope Courtney is because she's telling the story today.
Yeah,
so
it's all
this will
me.
be fun if Courtney's not awake.
Yeah, and my cat, I guess because, we left her for a week, Luna is, she'll just, lay in bed and just, lick me, constantly with her little, beady tongue.
She's like, you're here.
And I'm like, will you please just leave me alone for, 5 minutes? Just lay with me. Just don't lick me. But, so that was my night, both nights. So I'm like, stop it.
Yeah, Dolly has now started sleeping in the bed with us every night, but she waits until after we're both in bed and asleep, and then she sneaks in, and I think it's the cutest thing. I don't know why she does it that way, but, I'll go to bed, and then Andrew comes to bed a couple hours later, and then I wake up in the middle of the night, and she's, wedged her way between us with her head on the pillow. It's so cute. She just, sneaks in there every morning, and then, of course, Rosie has to sleep across my legs every night, so I don't know. She's interesting, but...
Animals are interesting.
Yes, but we love them. All right, so you ready to hop on into today's story?
Yes, I am ready. So today, I'm going to be telling the story of Holly Bobo.
Oh, okay.
Do you know this one?
Not a lot. Very little details.
Well, this one was a treat for me. Okay, that sounded bad, but... Basically, I knew the case, and I knew that she was missing, but I never knew there was a resolution to the case, and that things happened. So then I was doing research, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's things just kept happening. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited to tell you this story.
I'm very excited to hear it.
So my sources, a lot of this came from True Crime Society. They had a really great, full, long-ass thing, detailing, timeline, everything. Mm-hmm. It was awesome. Thank you, True Crime Society. I also used a Medium article and a Reddit thread. Don't judge me. So, on April 13th, 2011, Holly Bobo left for class around 8 a.m. like she did every Wednesday. An unknown man encountered her, and Holly would never be seen alive again. On this day began a 6-year fight for answers in Holly's disappearance. Holly Lynn Bobo was born on October 12, 1990, to Dana and Karen Bobo, and she also had a brother named Clint. I don't know if he was older or younger. Mm-hmm. I couldn't figure that out, but so she lived in Darden, Tennessee, which is a little bit west of Nashville, which I also didn't realize this case was so far away. I thought it was closer to Knoxville because I heard so much about it when it happened. But she was attending the University of Tennessee Martin, and she was studying to become a registered nurse. And she had a boyfriend named Drew Scott. Friends described her as sweet and shy, and they said that she was really quiet at first, but once you got to know her, she was just loud and bubbly and just really fun. She really loved her family and friends. She had a really strong faith in God and loved her church. She loved the outdoors and swimming and her pets, which one was a dog. Just so you know. Your little dogs.
Thanks for letting me know.
Jacqueline loves dogs, guys.
Yes.
Always got to tell her when there's a dog.
Courtney will send me a picture, be like, I saw this dog today, and I'm like, thank you.
She really loved music. Summertime was just her favorite. She loved hanging out with her boyfriend, and she'd just rather hang out with him, stay in rather than go out. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find too much information about her and her hobbies and her childhood, so I just wanted to include everything I said. But she was a really dedicated student. She was really excited to become a nurse, and just in pictures and videos, she just seems so vibrant, just such a fun person to be around. So on April 13th, 2011, She woke up at 4:30 a.m. to study for a test she had later that day. So Karen, who's her mom, she woke up a little bit later and she gave her a muffin. She also packed a lunch that Holly could take with her when she went to school. And Karen then left a little bit later to go to work. She was a teacher at a local elementary school. And around 7:30 a.m., Holly's boyfriend, Drew Scott, called to check in with her. And he was at her grandmother's property nearby hunting some turkeys. And on Karen's way to work, Holly called her and was like, hey, some of the cousins are giving Drew a hard time about whether he has permission to hunt here or not. Like, can he sort this out? So Karen did call Drew and her mother to smooth it all out so that Drew could hunt. Mm-hmm. So after that, Holly got ready for school and left around 8 a.m. to walk to the garage. And they said that she was a very routine person. Like, every Wednesday, she left around this time. Like, she had a very set schedule. Mm-hmm. So around the same time, Holly's brother Clint was woken up by the family's dog barking. And so he looked out his window through the blinds and he saw a man dressed in camouflage talking to Holly. And he just assumed it was Holly's boyfriend. You know, he was hunting nearby. I guess he'd hunt often. Like, there was no really other, like, male figures in her life. So he's like, it just has to be him. Mm-hmm. He said it looked like they were having an argument. Like, maybe they were breaking up. And he couldn't really hear what they were saying, but it looked like Holly was just saying, like, no and why. But he just decided, like, I'm not going to get involved. I'll let them have their argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if you, like, think that that's her significant other. Why would you get in the middle of it?
Yeah, like, if I walked and saw, like, my sister and my brother-in-law fighting, I'd be like, oh, bye. Like,
yeah, I'm out of here.
However, at the same time, a neighbor called Karen at work because she heard screaming, which I'm like, if Clint is closer, why doesn't he hear, like, screaming?
Yeah, like, there's a difference between, like, an argument and, like, screaming like something's wrong.
Yeah. So Karen calls Clint, and she's like, please go check on Holly. And he was like, said that he saw Holly walking towards the woods with Drew, her boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And so Karen's like, that's not Drew. I just talked to him. You know, he's at my mother's property hunting. Just get a gun and shoot whoever has Holly because he's probably hurting her. Mm-hmm. And then, so Clint is confused and just says, you want me to shoot Drew? So Karen just hangs up on him and calls 911.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is like, you know when you just wake up and you're like, I don't know what's happening.
I don't know what's happening right now. Yeah.
I don't understand. And it could just be like denial, you know, like, okay, nothing's happening. Like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. So Clint then goes outside and he sees blood in the garage. And a neighbor pulls up and said they heard screaming, so Clint decides to also call 911. And a friend from work drove Karen home, and as soon as Karen got there, she saw blood and started running for the woods and calling for Holly, but she heard no response. Mm-hmm. So she grabbed Clint and shook him and said, why didn't you do something? Which I'm like, I get it, but also, like,
I mean, it has to be so frustrating as a mom that you're like, literally someone was right here, like, you clearly saw something happening because you thought it was Drew, so why, like, I get the frustration, but also I'm sure he's feeling so many things at this time as well that that's probably not going to help the situation.
Yeah. Holly's father, Dana, was at work, but rushed home once he heard Holly was missing. And so law enforcement arrived and, like, immediately began canvassing the area. Mm-hmm. Immediately looking everywhere. And they really did, like, kind of think Clint might have had something to do with it. They were really suspicious of him because it's like, well, he saw her. Like, he was the last one seeing her alive. He saw her arguing with someone. Mm-hmm. He didn't do anything. Or they're like, well, this story could be false altogether. You know, like, maybe Clint is saying this happened, but really he had something to do with it.
And the neighbors that heard the scream, did they see this man or they just heard the commotion? Okay, so Clint's the only one who saw this man in camo. Yeah. Okay.
So they're kind of like, okay, this is kind of, you know, and camo, I mean, this is like rural Tennessee. I'm pretty sure everyone is wearing camo. Like, doesn't really narrow down your search pool here. So police did ask him to remove his shirt so they could search for any signs of scratches or anything indicating that he could have been in the woods with Holly. Mm-hmm. So the next day, 300 to 400 people started searching for Holly. And so they used scent dogs, helicopters, ATVs, even horses in their efforts to find her in the woods surrounding her home. And at this time, police are just trying to come up with, like, all these different scenarios, like what could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So they really initially believed that Holly may have been taken during what was supposed to be a home invasion, but the suspect never made it in. But I'm also like, 8 a.m. is kind of a weird time for a home invasion, because I know even before I was working from home, when I left for work, I was still here at 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, if you're going to rob someone, like...
And especially... a lot of the times I feel like those early morning home invasions, like you've like staked out the family so you know their routine.
Yeah.
So it's like if she had the same routine, you knew that she would be gone soon. You know, I don't know what Clint's schedule was like, but typically when that happens, you're like, you stake out the home beforehand. So that doesn't really, like I know when I was growing up, our house got broken into a couple of times, and one of them was like 9 o'clock in the morning, because it's like, oh, most people are like gone for work. And it was actually our neighbor that was home and like saw everything happen, but later found out that like this car had like driven by to see our routine, and they knew exactly what time we left in the morning.
Yeah.
So then they would wait until after that. So especially if she had such a routine schedule where it's not like she wasn't supposed to be there at that time.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
So, but they don't really have anything to go on, so they're like, this is gonna be our theory for now. Her parents were interviewed by NBC and really just begged for whoever had her to please bring her home. Dana also believed that whoever took Holly knew her daily schedule, because the person who took her probably knew when she left. She left at the same time. Like, he knew when to, you know, I guess, ambush her or surprise her, you know. And this just made me sad. Karen said, "Holly, I love you so much. She's so precious, you don't even know." And they're just begging for, please, just any information into finding her. So, on April 15th, which is 2 days after Holly goes missing, 8 miles from Holly's home, her lunchbox and other personal belongings were found in a creek. And so far, there's no suspects, and the police say Drew and Clint were both cleared, and they don't think they had any involvement. At this point, TBI offered a $25,000 reward for any information that would lead to Holly's safe return. And TBI also said there was no evidence of drag marks by the woods, so they believed that meant that when Holly was taken into the woods, that she was complying with her attacker. Like, she was probably terrified, but she was like, maybe if I just go along with this, you know, I'll be able to get out of this. Then, on April 16th, they announced they believe Holly's attacker was 5'10" to 6 feet tall and weighing around 180 to 200 pounds, which I feel like is the description of most men.
Yes.
I feel like that's not really narrowing it down.
Pretty broad description there.
Yeah, and especially because it's like he was wearing camo, and it's like, okay, like, again, every man in this area.
Yeah.
So on April 18th, Governor Bill Haslam did donate $50,000 to the reward, and so now if anyone had information leading to the safe return of Holly, it was now up to $75,000. And at this point, police had received around 250 leads, but they still had no person of interest. They had no one who really fit any description they needed. And they asked the public to report any suspicious behavior, like if there was anyone who was calling into work a lot when they normally don't, if they were like cleaning a car, an ATV, or suddenly selling a car. Like, it may seem like nothing, but just tell us, because maybe it is. And at this point, they were also searching the local waterways, and over 900 people were involved in the search for Holly. So, besides the lunchbox and other items found at the creek, they were also analyzing the blood that was found in the garage, as well as a piece of duct tape that had a blonde hair in it that was found on the ground nearby. And at this point, police also start to backtrack their statements about clearing Clint and Drew. And now they're saying no one's been officially ruled out, and a lot of people just really suspected Clint. You know, he saw her fighting with someone, he didn't do anything. Like, people really, really think Clint was involved. Then, on April 23rd, which is 9 days after she went missing, the searches really started to slow down. Volunteers had searched, like, almost every part of Decatur County, including the lakes and waterways. And at this point, police, through some leads, have a few possible suspects they're looking into. The first was Terry Britt. So Terry Britt was a registered sex offender in the area, and he had a history of stalking and raping women. So Not a great history to have during this kind of case.
Pretty good suspect to have, sounds like.
Yeah. So his home was searched and wiretapped during this investigation, but he did have an alibi and police could find no evidence on him. And so with this and Clint, they were like, okay, we really don't have anything else. They were like, there's no new leads, there's really no new suspects. And so then nothing really happened until January in 2012. So this is almost a year later.
Mm-hmm.
So in January 2012, Tony Calabrese and his roommate had their apartment in Ohio searched by TBI and the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. So his computer was seized with a few other belongings. But it turns out he wasn't a suspect necessarily, but he was being investigated for hindering the investigation by soliciting leads and portraying himself as the leader of a search and rescue team.
Well.
So he'd even set up a website with pictures of Holly to solicit leads and claimed he'd pass them on to law enforcement, but he didn't.
Okay.
So, citizen detectives are awesome. People, citizen sleuths, they're awesome, but do not get in the way of the actual investigation.
Yeah, you have to share the information that you find. That's kind of the point.
Yeah. So Tony was just really drawing attention away from the investigation and just getting in the way. He'd never even traveled to Tennessee to look for Holly, even though he claimed he did. So I don't really know what this guy's end game was. I don't know if he just kind of loved the fact that he was helping.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he was doing. So then in February of 2012, TBI now says they're offering $85,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for Holly's disappearance. So this is also on top of a community-raised award of $250,000.
Wow.
So a lot of money here.
Mm-hmm.
If you knew something, you could make a lot of money. But at this point, the trail just kind of goes cold. There's nothing else. There's no leads, no suspects, no evidence. They have not found Holly's remains or found her alive. So nothing really happens until about 2 years later, on February 28th, 2014. There's finally a break in the case.
Mm-hmm.
So 15 miles from Holly's home, a residence in Decatur County was surrounded by TBI, and 29-year-old Zack Adams lived at this place. So neighbors told reporters that Zack's truck and his mother's PT Cruiser were being searched. And Decatur County officers arrested Zack on an unrelated assault charge from February 6th, where he held a gun to his girlfriend's sister's head and threatened to gut her.
Oh, okay.
So, in addition, he had just been bonded out after being arrested in a different county on drug charges. So, we'll get into Zack in a second, because there's
some more to dive into.
Zachy has not been very good.
Sounds like a winner.
Also on this day, TBI does release a press conference that the grand jury returned an indictment on Zack Adams for coercion of a witness. So that's when threats, intimidation, or some other force is used to pressure a witness to testify, withhold information, or elude the judicial process. That is a felony, so don't try to threaten people to not testify. And as well, they were also returning an indictment for Jason Autry for 1 count of especially aggravated kidnapping and 1 count of first-degree felony murder. So I'm assuming they had quite a bit of evidence if they're going to indict these men.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about Zack.
We're
going to get into Zack. He doesn't exactly have the cleanest record that you could have. He was also kind of known, I think he was a local drug dealer. People knew he was on drugs. So in 2002, he was arrested for drug possession and driving infractions. And then in 2004, he was arrested for aggravated domestic assault after shooting his mother in the knee with a 9mm gun.
The fuck?
Yeah. So he pled guilty.
Wow.
It's pretty obvious. Can't really hide that one. And he was sentenced to 11 months, 29 days in jail, but 6 months of that was suspended, and he was supposed to go to rehab.
I'm sorry. Did you just say that this man just spent 5 months in jail for shooting his mother?
Yeah, and I'm also assuming, because aggravated domestic assault in Tennessee is a felony, so I'm assuming because he pled guilty, they amended it down to a misdemeanor.
For shooting his mother?
Yes. In the knee.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm like, who knows, like, how long it took that woman to recover from being shot in the knee? Like, how many surgeries or rehab, like, all that stuff. I'm like, what?
Good God.
Oh, it gets better. In 2005, he was arrested for threatening his grandparents with a gun. And I'm like, your grandparents? Like, come on.
Yeah.
I guess I always just think of my grandparents as these, like, sweet little old people. Like, don't threaten them with a gun.
Right.
Just leave them alone. They've lived a long life. They've worked a lot of years. Just leave them alone.
They don't need their snotty grandson coming over here threatening them with a gun. Like, come on.
I mean, visit them and call them and talk to them, but don't threaten them with a gun.
Good life advice from Courtney.
Yeah. So, in 2007, he was arrested for theft of property, and he tested positive for marijuana and methamphetamine, which I thought was very weird, because I feel like marijuana is kind of like a downer, it kind of mellows you out, but meth is more like an upper, so I don't really know what he's doing, but who am I to judge?
He's got all kinds of things going on. I'm judging. I mean, I don't
I mean, maybe weed and meth together are a good combo. I don't know. I'm not going to try it.
I'm just judging him because of all the other things he's got going on. I mean, I don't really care about your drug usage, but if it leads you to shoot your mom in the knee and threaten your grandparents with a gun, then I'm for sure judging, so.
Yeah. Clearly this combo is not working out well for you. So on April 4th, 2011, and this is 9 days before Holly goes missing, rangers in Natchez Trace State Park arrested him on charges of tampering/fabricating evidence, assault on an officer, drug possession, and resisting arrest. And in June 2011, so it's after Holly's disappearance, he was arrested for driving on a suspended license. So he's not unfamiliar to police officers.
He's got a few things going on.
So then people looked at his social media account. And on December 14th, 2011, he posted a picture of himself in all camos in the woods with the caption, "Who am I looking for?" So investigators really believe he was like mocking the search efforts for Holly. So they really searched Zack's property. It lasted for a few days. They used shovels, metal probes, cadaver dogs, underwater cameras, all that. He's really not looking good. So Danielle Darnell, who lives in the area, says she and Holly's mother saw 3 men acting really strangely the week before Holly disappeared. She said she knew Zack her whole life, and that it was Zack and 2 of his friends were following Holly at a coon hunt dinner. I don't know what a coon hunt dinner is.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
But I'm assuming it's a very southern thing. I tried to look it up, and I'm not sure still. Like, I know it's like raccoon hunting, but I don't know if you like eat dinner and then go hunting, or if you're eating the coon.
Eating
I don't know.
Yeah, that's.
I tried to look it up.
I don't know.
Not sure.
Not sure about that one.
I tried to look it up, but I was like, yeah, we'll just, if you know, write in. But
yes, let us know, please.
She said that Holly was on like the stage walking around, and they were basically like stalking her a little bit, just kind of following her around. So Holly's friend Candace Wood said she was with Holly at this coon hunt on April 9th, 2011, and that there was a man with a heavier build wearing camo staring at them frequently. And he was like on his phone, and anytime like they would catch him looking, he would just look down. Like, he wasn't making it like not obvious. Like, he would be like, they'd look over and he'd just be like, head straight down.
Oh.
So Candace did provide details, and they formulated a sketch, but later they realized this man was Shane Austin. He'll come up. So after the search of Zack's home, evidence was presented to a grand jury again, and they did choose to indict Zack on the counts of especially aggravated kidnapping and felony first-degree murder, and investigators would not reveal what evidence was presented yet. And the next day, TBI held a press conference discussing the charges as well, saying they believed Holly was forcefully taken from her home without consent and killed in the perpetration of this kidnapping. They didn't comment on if there would be any more arrests, and they did not reveal if they'd found Holly's remains. So, of course, Zack pled not guilty to the charges.
Of course.
And he also had that witness coercion charge. So, apparently that came from Zack threatening his brother, Dylan Adams. So, Dylan was currently in prison for federal firearm charges at the time. So, according to TBI, Zack tried to pass a message from his Chester County cell to his brother in Obion County through an inmate who was being transferred to Obion County.
Wow.
And so basically, this inmate was like, yeah, I'll tell your brother. And he didn't. He told investigators. He was like, yeah, I have information. He's like, I have information here. But the message that the inmate said was, tell my brother he's the one who started all this shit, and if he doesn't shut his mouth, he will be in the hole beside her.
Oh, okay.
So we know jailhouse informants aren't always the most reliable, but this is pretty specific.
Mm-hmm.
So, when Dylan was arrested in September 2013, he told investigators that he saw Holly alive at Zack's home following her abduction. And so this seems kind of like when things really started, was with this confession.
Mm-hmm.
So an affidavit for a search warrant states that Dylan told authorities that on April 13, 2011, he went to Zack's residence to get his truck. Dylan said he saw Holly Bobo sitting in a green chair in the living room wearing a pink t-shirt. Jason Autry was also standing nearby. He said that Zack was wearing camo shorts, black cutoff sleeves t-shirt, and some green Crocs. And he said that Zack told him he raped Holly and videotaped it. So this videotape's never been found. There is more references coming up to videos, but nothing's really ever been found.
Mm-hmm.
And Dylan also later took back his confession, saying investigators coerced it out of him and that he was like forced to say this information, which we all know happens way too frequently.
Mm-hmm.
But whether his statement was true or not, this is what led to the arrest of Zack Adams, Jason Autry, and Shane Austin. I don't know if Dylan was telling the truth and trying to get a deal, or if they were like, tell us this, we'll give you a deal. I'm not sure. So on September 7th, 2014, Holly's partial remains were found by two men who were hunting for ginseng plants in a wooded area in northern Decatur County. And this was about 20 miles from Darden, but only 6 miles from Zack's property. So Larry Stone was one of the men who found the remains, and he said he saw a large bucket in the woods. And this is kind of where my Reddit thread comes in, because he doesn't say what was in the bucket, but he said it gave him cold chills.
Ugh.
And apparently investigators asked him to not say what was in it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people believe that he maybe picked it up and the remains were underneath, or that there wasn't, her ID was found nearby, and so they're wondering if her ID was in the bucket. So he sees Holly Bobo's ID, and then you're like, this remains are probably her.
Yeah.
But he does say once he sees the bucket, he felt something telling him to turn around, and that's when he spotted remains. And he just said he knew it was Holly. But all that was recovered was her skull, including her jaw, her teeth, several ribs, and one shoulder blade. In an interview with Larry, he was saying he was just happy he found her, because he was like, if not, there'd be no case. If you don't have any remains or proof, that she died, then there's no case. And he did set up a memorial for her where her remains were found. And he said he chose pink and green flowers because those were her favorite. And he has a cross. I know. Literally, he was crying in the video and was like, I just want her family to know, I cared. I didn't, all that. It was heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking. So we've talked about the human garbage that is Zack, but 5 other men were also suspected to be involved in Holly's disappearance and murder. Honestly, it might be more than 5 other men. There's so many people involved in this case. When I was researching it, it's crazy. I don't know how so many people can be so horrible. But his brother Dylan was charged with tampering with evidence, And it said that Dylan helped dispose of items he knew belonged to Holly. So he, knew what was happening.
Yeah.
So Jason Autry was also charged with the kidnapping and murder charge. And at this time, when he was charged, he was serving a 3-year sentence for aggravated assault, and Jason pled not guilty to the kidnapping and murder charges. Mm-hmm. So Shane Austin is the man who stalked Holly and her friend Candace at the coon hunt dinner. So he was never officially arrested, but it's heavily speculated he was involved. So originally, he was offered immunity in exchange for information regarding her disappearance. So there were some phone records showing he spoke to Zack several times that day, and police believed he also assisted in disposing of her body and her belongings. However, the deal was withdrawn because police really believed he wasn't being truthful in his statement. And nothing else really happened with this because on February 27th, 2015, he completed suicide by hanging himself in a hotel room in Florida. Which, if you're kind of suspected to help with a murder, it doesn't exactly look good. But
yeah, as far as your involvement.
Yeah, but as far as it goes, he was never formally charged with anything. It's just speculation he was involved. So then we have another set of brothers. So there's Mark and Jeffrey Piercy. So on May 29th, 2014, they were charged with tampering with evidence and accessory after the fact. So these arrests were made based on the allegations by Jeff's former roommate, Sandra King. So she said in May 2014, Jeffrey showed her part of a video showing Zack assaulting Holly, who was tied up and crying. And she said she only watched a small clip and she didn't see the sexual assault. So police arranged for a recorded call between Sandra and Jeff to see if he'll say something. So on the phone, Sandra said, "That video of Holly, if it had been you, I would have watched it." Not exactly sure what she's trying to say there. But he replied, "I know," meaning he knew kind of what she was talking about. So Sandra also alleges that Mark, who's Jeff's brother, filmed the video. So this did go to trial, and Sandra did testify that she asked to see the video, which was on a cell phone, and that she was able to identify Holly and Zack through photos she'd seen on the news. And she said when Jeff showed her the video, he called Zack a sick bastard.
And did Sandra say when she saw this video? Was it right after, or was it several years later when she talked about it?
It was several years later. Yeah, it was in May 2014 is when she said Jeffrey showed her that video. So I guess she immediately went to the police on that one.
Okay.
Both Jeff and Mark deny ever seeing a video or having a video. And then Jeff also claimed during this recorded phone call, he couldn't hear Sandra, and his ex-wife's name is Holly, so he was confused and just was I know. I don't know.
Okay, well, part of me is that sounds completely ridiculous, but the other part of me has had phone conversations with men and can be yeah, that sounds about right. So, yeah, I don't know.
This happens to me a lot where it's I can't hear someone, and I'll be after, I'm yeah, I know. I'll just kind of go along with it if I'm confused. If he did hear her, it's a very convenient out, but I don't really know. Police did analyze over 20 phones and found no trace of any video. And clearly, none of these people are that smart. Most are on drugs, so I kind of assume there's no video, but I don't know. Charges against both men were dropped just because there was no evidence.
I also wonder, because this video would have been taken in 2011, I don't think the cloud was really a thing then. I mean, if it was just on your device and then it was deleted from your device, would it be much more difficult to find then versus now, where most of the stuff that you save on your device is also backed up to a cloud that would be more traceable? I don't know.
That's true. I'm not sure. I also know, they can sometimes see, items that have been deleted. I've heard of that. They can see when things were deleted.
Yeah.
I don't know how far that searching was back then. But also, not that I'm trying to give advice to people, but, how many people did you send this video to? If just like
right,
this random guy's like, look at this video, like what?
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, this sounds kind of mean, but there is a very large reward for information. Like,
Yeah.
you could get a lot of money if you have this video.
Yeah. Like, why would you not?
And like, who are you protecting? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So, in May 2017, prosecution submits a gun they found in evidence as the murder weapon, but they don't really talk about it. They're like, this is the murder weapon, no further comment.
Okay.
And then in July 2017, Jason does receive federal immunity on any charges related to Holly's murder in exchange for his testimony against Zack. So this is a little weird because I also saw information that Jason is currently still in prison awaiting trial for his charges. So I don't know if the county still had information on him and could do it, but federally, no, I'm not sure. It's very weird, but...
Interesting.
In September 2017, Zack Adams' trial begins. So Zack was defended by Jennifer Thompson. Don't know her, but that's okay. And the prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney Paul Hagerman. So Paul's opening statements say that Zack was bragging about Holly's abduction, rape, and murder, saying, this is very crude, just gonna give a heads up, saying he couldn't have picked a prettier bitch. He said Jason Autry would come in here and testify that he wasn't there for the abduction, but he was summoned to Shane Austin's trailer after, because he was trying to get morphine, and that he was summoned there, and that he found Shane, Dylan, and Zack there, and that Holly was wrapped in a blanket in the back of Zack's truck. Jason was allegedly asked to help dispose of the remains after Zack had raped and killed her. He said that Jason would also testify that they were going to put her in the Tennessee River and, quote, gut her so she didn't float up, which made me think earlier about the assault charge on his girlfriend's sister, who he also threatened to gut her. So I'm like, is he using this a lot? Like, that's kind of convincing. Like,
it's a very specific phrase.
Yeah, I don't know if, like, the jury heard that, but to me, I was like, that's pretty specific. That's a very, like, specific word usage.
Yeah.
They then said, suddenly Holly moved, and they realized that she wasn't dead, and that Zack then allegedly pulled out a gun and shot her in the head. And then, on the way back, Jason asked how Holly had ended up in the back of his truck in not so nice words. I made that way nicer. Zack replied, we took her, me and Shane. We took her, shot her up with drugs. We raped her. We thought we had killed her. So, I'm not sure. But then the defense comes up with their opening statements. They claim Zack is 100% innocent. And they kind of did have a promising case since most of the evidence was circumstantial. It was mostly, this is what we think happened, this is what witnesses say happened. And it was their plan to try and convince the jury that Dylan's confession was coerced. So the defense brought up another man, Victor Densmore. He was also a person of interest at the time. He was a sex offender in the area. He lived close to where her body was found, and some of Holly's personal belongings were found near his home, so he was also a person of interest. Which also made me think, though, like, with the sex offender registry, and you can look up exactly where someone lives
easy
as a sex offender, I'm like, if you were someone who did something and wanted to plan it on them, like, that'd be really easy. So Victor was also given immunity in this case for his testimony. And the defense say that officers went to Victor, and apparently Zack was saying that Victor was his alibi and he was with Victor that morning. And so they're like, is this true? And Victor said Zack was their guy, but they should go after Dylan to get to him because Dylan was slow. Their words, not mine. So I don't know if Dylan just had maybe like a lower IQ or, you know, what exactly So basically, the defense are just really trying to show that Dylan's confession was forced, and they even claimed that they used unethical investigatory techniques in their interview. I didn't see any more specifics. So they're also saying in a 2014 weapons charge, they gave Dylan a no-jail plea deal under the condition that he go live with Officer Dennis Benjamin, who Dylan did not know this man. It wasn't like, go live with your friend who's an officer. It gets weird.
That's an interesting arrangement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, that's kind of like overstepping your job.
Yeah.
Like, if you're an officer and you're like, I'll take this guy in to live in my house. Like, what?
That doesn't make any sense.
So 5 weeks later, Officer Benjamin calls and says he has someone in his home who wants to confess to the murder of Holly Bobo.
Oh, that's convenient.
Very convenient. So his confession did lead to many arrests, but much of what Dylan confessed did not match the evidence. And in my note, I put, Brendan Dassey making a murderer anyone? Like,
yes.
That's literally what it was. They just kind of like, it didn't line up at all.
Yeah.
So, and he was in this officer's house for 5 weeks. Who knows what that officer planted in his head?
Right?
Who knows?
So many issues here.
So these are some pretty loaded opening statements here.
Yeah.
So Holly's parents, brother, boyfriend, and neighbors did testify to establish a timeline. So Karen testified and described the morning that I described at the beginning of the episode. That was all from her testimony. Mm-hmm. She was also asked to identify Holly's lunchbox and some personal items like her wallet and her ID. And as any mother would, she was very overcome with anxiety and she began to cry on the stand. She was like gasping for air and saying she couldn't breathe, and I did read somewhere that she did end up passing out. So a nurse did have to come in, but the jury and media were both sent out of the courtroom. Which I can't even imagine being this poor woman having to be like, yeah, here's my daughter's things, like knowing what happened. So once the court starts back up, the defense asks for a mistrial because the jury saw Karen get upset and they'll be impartial.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm no legal expert, but I'm pretty sure that's not grounds for a mistrial.
Well, thankfully for you, the judge agreed and said this was a medical emergency because they had to bring a nurse in. Like I think it was saying like, I don't know if her blood pressure dropped or escalated, whatever, she passed out. Like, it was just a medical emergency. So they continue her testimony, and she says she did receive tips from the community about Zack and Shane and maybe their involvement, but she said, I also received tips about other people as well. Clint then testifies about how he saw Holly talking to a man, and he assumed it was Drew. He talked to Karen, and she said it's not Drew, and to go out there and shoot him or intervene. And as they were walking towards the woods, Clint then realized the man looked larger and wider than Drew. So he's testifying about what he saw, description, all that. So this trial did go on for like 9 days, and there was a lot of information about it, so I've tried to pick out some of the highlights so that we weren't here for 3 hours. So Zack was interviewed a few days after Holly went missing. And he did seem visibly shaken and said he'd do anything to find her, which, would you? The defense said if Zack was acting weird, it was just due to drugs. He was on drugs, and Zack also had 2 large scratches on his arms a few days after she went missing. But the defense claimed it was from a police altercation on April 4th, 2011. And all I can think is this is like a few days after April 13th. I have a lot of scratches from my cats. That's like 2 weeks almost for them to be healed. There's a very obvious difference between a healed scratch and a fresher scratch. So I'm not sure. So then Zack's ex-girlfriend Rebecca also testified against him. So originally she defended him and was saying like, no, he had nothing to do with it, but she changed her tune once he was arrested. And she said it's because she was scared of him, and that she, wasn't going to speak out against him while he was not in jail. But then the defense tells the jury that her change of tune was due to TBI, threatening to take her kid away if she didn't cooperate. I don't know if that's speculation or just doubt. I don't know. But her testimony, I cannot imagine being Holly's parents having to sit through this, is all I'm going to say. So, she testified that one night she was cooking dinner and a news story came on about Holly. And Shane was there and smirked and started laughing. And Zack said they'll never find her. Which is pretty damning right there.
Yeah.
She also said that one time there was this large plastic tub. And Zack said everything was ready to go to dispose of Holly's body. But later, he said it was just a joke to see if Rebecca would call TBI.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what kind of jokes you tell with your friends.
But that's
not the kind of joke I tell.
No, that's not one of them. I don't think I've ever made a joke along those lines before.
And this was a case that like shocked this whole like city and community and like was a very big deal. I mean, any disappearance like this is a big deal. So like, why are you joking about it? And like, clearly, if you're just joking about it, then you're just a horrible person also. But she also testified that on April 13th, the day Holly went missing, he had 3 large scratches on his neck. So she also testified that he said he was going to be a few places that he wasn't. Like he said, I'm going to the dump with this guy. He never went to the dump. Like what he was saying didn't really line up. So this is pretty good evidence. I mean, circumstantial, but evidence nonetheless. But the defense did try to discredit her, saying her timeline is off and her memory's incorrect because she used drugs. So they're just, I guess in this town, they're just using drugs to discredit everyone. They're like, everyone's on drugs, you can't trust anybody. Which,
nothing happened.
True.
Everyone's on drugs. The end.
So Jason Autry then testifies. He said he called Zack around 8 a.m. because he was looking for morphine, and Zack said he was busy, but he'd call later. And so shortly after, Zack called him to Shane's house saying he needed some assistance. So Jason saw the body in the truck, but assumed it was someone who owed Zack money. Which, I mean, I'm not on drugs, but if this is like the drug culture, like, y'all need a new hobby.
I'm pretty sure it's also illegal to kill someone that owes you money. So I'm pretty sure a crime was committed here either way.
And like, it sucks when people owe you money and don't pay. But that's not really a valid reason to kill someone. I mean,
No.
But then Zack said it was Holly Bobo. Jason didn't know who she was, but decided to help dispose of the body, which, I don't know. I'm just trying to put myself in this scenario. Like, I just walk up to someone I'm not even that close with. I'm just trying to get drugs. And they're like, yeah, this is this woman who I just kidnapped, raped, and murdered. Do you want to help me dispose of the body? And you're like,
okay.
Sure. Okay.
Like, what? No.
I don't know. Maybe he was just trying to get his fix and was like, whatever, if I could help you get this done faster, I'll get drugs, which is still a terrible mindset.
Yeah. But
anyway.
Sounds plausible.
Yeah. I mean, I've been around people on drugs and there's no logic there.
Yeah, they'll do anything.
Yeah. So he said a few days later, he was trying to get drugs again, and he heard Shane and Zack arguing. And Shane said, you didn't have to kill her. And Zack was saying, you're just as guilty, you hid it. So I don't know what that means. I'm assuming nothing good. So they began to fight, like physically fight, but it was broken up and then just everyone went home. So a little suspicious. And then Jason said a few days later, Zack was getting annoyed at Dylan because he wasn't sleeping and he kept talking about Holly. And he was really worried they were going to get in trouble. And Shane asked if they needed to kill him.
That's a normal response.
And I'm like, what? What? I don't understand.
What are these people doing right now? What are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah. Whew. So in Jason's testimony, there's a lot of other just crude, disgusting comments that I'm just not going to say. You can find them if you want to read them. The True Crime Society does have them on there. You can find it, but I'm just not going to say it because just know. Like, fuck these guys, just know. So Jason said that Zack did admit that he raped Holly, and he did mention it was quick because someone was mowing the lawn. So I am including this because a neighbor near where it's believed Zack raped her said he was mowing the lawn that day around 8:30. So there may be some validity to this comment because, you know, if that's what he said, and then there is someone testifying, I was mowing the lawn at this exact time. So the trial did end up lasting 9 days, and like I said, there was just too much detail for me to put everything in, so I tried to just highlight some of the important points in the case. On September 20th, both sides gave their closing statements, and on September 21st, after 11 hours of deliberation, the jury did find Zack Adams guilty on all charges, and he was sentenced to life without parole plus 50 years. Then, on January 22nd, 2018, Dylan Adams entered an offered plea, which we've talked about before, is where you're not exactly saying you're guilty, but you're saying the state has enough evidence that a jury would find you guilty. And as a part of this agreement, he pled guilty to the charges of facilitation of first-degree murder and especially aggravated kidnapping. So he was sentenced to 15 years for the facilitation charge and 35 years for the kidnapping, which he's currently serving concurrently without parole. So very likely he'll just be in jail probably for the rest of his life. In March of 2020, Zack is applying for a new trial. His new attorney says she can cite 56 mistakes his lawyer made, including the county not being far enough away for an impartial jury, and apparently the judge kept telling the defense to hurry up and move on. Don't know what context, but that is still pending. So if there is an update on that, I'll let you guys know. But currently he is trying to get a new trial. Also in March 2020, Tennessee passed the Holly Bobo Act. So when Holly went missing, they couldn't issue an Amber Alert because she wasn't under 18, because she was 20 when she went missing. So the Holly Bobo Act now allows TBI to issue endangered person alerts for any endangered missing person under 21.
That's good.
So that is new. But this case is just so sad because I think when I was researching it, like, Holly should be here, and she should be celebrating her 30th birthday here in a few weeks. From when this is released, her birthday was, in October, and it's just tragic, and I'm gonna cry talking about it because I bawled my eyes out last night watching it. So the True Crime Society article had a lot of YouTube videos of Holly, and so one was from her school, and it was her and another guy dancing to You're the One That I Want. It was adorable. But the one that really made me cry is there's a video of her and her friends in their car just singing along to Party in the USA, which is what we used to do. And, like, there's videos of us on the internet just, like, singing along to songs in the car. And it's just, she was just so beautiful and had so much life ahead of her. Like, she was going to do, like, so many good things. She was going to be a nurse and help people. And these just fucking assholes, like, took her life away for no reason. And it's just really tragic.
Such a tragic story.
So, yeah, that's the heartbreaking story of the murder of Holly Bobo.
So do you for sure think that they're the ones that did it? Like, you don't have any doubt?
I think so. I think there's a lot of, like, them just saying a bunch of random stuff, but I do think they likely did it. Like, I think there's just, like, way too much among all of them.
Yeah.
That at least one of them had to be involved. But
because I feel like there's so much, like, circumstantial evidence and just, like, witness statements, but so many of them corroborate with each other. So it's like, if you have multiple, like, obviously if you just have one person that says, oh yeah, this is what they told me, the end, it's like, okay, maybe. But when you have multiple people all saying similar things, it really starts to,
and I think I forgot to mention it, but in the trial, also they could tell from her skull that she was shot in the head. And so when Jason was testifying that Zack shot her in the head, like, it kind of seems like there's so many things that, like, okay, the timeline may have been off according to the defense. I don't know exactly, but there's just too much here for me to be like, you know.
Yeah.
It really seems like he did it. I don't know. He seems like he had the history for it, too. I don't really know why. There was also some speculation that Zack, even though he had the girlfriend Rebecca, was also sleeping with Holly's cousin. And that, like, he wanted to have a three-way with them, but Holly wouldn't. Like, I don't know. Like, a lot of it seemed maybe like rumor, so I didn't include it, which I'm saying it now, but, like, it's just, I don't know. And maybe I just want him to be it. So that I know someone, you know, is in jail for it, but.
It's like, you know, that, like, justice was served. Like, so people that suspected Clint in the beginning, do they think that he was working with them in any way? Or once all of this came out, then they're like, okay, like, he really had nothing to do with it?
It sounds like people just believe he had nothing to do with it. I saw some, like, YouTube comments where they're like, he still seems very weird and acts very weird, but, I mean, I don't know. They said they thought the whole family acted weird, but I think it's hard to judge how people act when they're mourning.
Yeah, exactly.
But a lot of it was just, like, YouTube comments of them being like, yeah, this is really weird. Like, what are you doing? But, yeah. And, I mean, maybe more information will come out, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's super sad.
Yeah.
But definitely a story that needs to be told and needs to be heard, especially some of the ones that are, like, local to us that we remember hearing, but that I don't think got much, like, national attention, that maybe not many people know the story. I think those are always important to tell. Yeah,
because I remember this, like, when she went missing, but I didn't know there was a resolution to it.
Yeah.
And all that, so it's just, like, yeah. I don't know if people outside of Tennessee really heard about this case or not. Let us know if you'd heard of it before.
Definitely. Yeah.
But
all right, so Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
Okay, my perk of the week is last night, Kevin and I started playing this game on the Xbox. So it's like an original Xbox game, like from the original Xbox, and they now have it like on the Xbox One, but it's called Fusion Frenzy. So it really seems like the original Mario Party for Xbox. But
that sounds fun.
Yeah, it's just like different little mini games where you like compete against each other and just try to do stuff and like race around a track or get these little orbs, and the graphics are just horrible because it's from like 2001, but it was just super fun because apparently him and his brothers used to play it a lot when they were kids, and so his brother and his girlfriend have been playing it a lot lately, and so we're like, now we got to play and get good so that when we play them, we beat them. But it's, of course, we have trouble finding games like we can play together that we both like, so it's something fun that we can just do while, you know, hanging out, since there's nothing else to do at the time. But yeah, so that's...
Activities are very limited. Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it's definitely a good, just like, something different. Something, and especially because I had been researching this case, and I was just really sad, like, watching these YouTube videos. So I was like, okay, we'll just play this game that's, you know, fun. But yeah. Jacqueline, what's your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is going to be The Office, which I am rewatching. So I've watched it entirely once, and then I've watched like random episodes, but this is my second like full rewatch. And it's just like even funnier the second time around, and so it's just been a nice light and funny distraction from the state of the world. And also, if you guys like The Office and you have not yet, be sure you listen to the Office Ladies podcast with Angela Kinsey and Jenna Fisher, because it is wonderful and hilarious, and they go through each episode every week and they talk about like some behind the scenes facts, and they have some of the like writers and directors and other actors interviewed on there as well. So yeah, definitely check them out if you guys like The Office, and obviously you like podcast because you're here. So
yeah, it gives me like a new appreciation for the things they do that I never really realized. But
yeah, same.
Kevin and I, when we first started dating, I watched The Office and he watched Parks and Rec, and then when like COVID started and I was like, I need something not so serious, we like did a complete rewatch of The Office and like flew through it. It was kind of embarrassing how fast we flew through it. But yeah, it was really good. Because we're watching How I Met Your Mother now.
Oh, that's a good one, too. It's so easy when you're, like, watching those 30-minute shows on Netflix, because it's, like, literally 21 minutes. So it's, like, you sit down and you just keep, like, next episode. You're like, I watched a season today? What? How did that happen?
And, like, at that point, there was no sports on, because usually Kevin will, like, turn sports on, like, both TVs, or at least one TV, while I'm, like, reading or doing whatever I'm doing. But there was, like, no sports, and that's when we were playing, like, 7 Days to Die, so we'd just, like, sit there playing our game and, like, watch The Office. So, and it kept being like, are you still watching?
Yep, still here.
All right.
Go right back to what I'm doing. Yeah. Just a reminder that we are still running our contest. Maybe by the time this actually comes out, we will have reached our 100 followers on Instagram, and this will be obsolete. That would be great. But if not, make sure you go follow us on Instagram at Caffeinated Crimes Pod, where we will be drawing someone to win a sticker, a pin, and a gift card to a coffee shop of your choice. And we will also be doing the same thing when we reach 50 reviews on Apple Podcasts. So if you listen on an iPhone, make sure that you go and leave us a rating and a review there. That would be wonderful.
And if your parents have an iPhone, just go ahead and grab their iPhone account, give us another review, put your name down, we'll count it.
Exactly. And you can also email us at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail. If you feel so inclined and you are able, you can donate to us on patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes, where we have some extra bonus episodes and a monthly Q&A and some other little goodies for you guys. So definitely check us out over there. And yeah,
go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.